Hey, heard they talking down on Casa cause they know I'm nuts. Bring her to the crib, she on the bed, I gotta stretch. I don't like to text in person, I'd be hard to catch. I've been popping since a youngin', I don't need to flex. We gon' see who.
I won't share everything with y'all right now, but I do want to share one thing that I thought was dope. And it's going to be a new segment that I start called Words with Friends. And it's actually a little play on words for our title, if you caught that. But I thought it would be cool to help the podcast be a little bit more accessible to the everyday viewer. A lot of the conversations that I've been having are very formal in nature. And I'm hoping that I could just start to bring on some of my friends and people that I actually kick it with on a daily basis. And we could just share our opinions on current events, joke, laugh, or whatever we want to do. So stay on the lookout for that new segment, Words with Friends, where we'll talk about taboo subjects and try to push the conversation forward. But with that said, I hope y'all are ready for another legendary conversation, because today's guest is a budding mogul in every sense of the word, and I'm truly blessed to be sitting next to my guy.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I introduce to y'all Jordan Williams, aka JP, the man, the myth, the legend.
Appreciate it, Tay.
What's up, brother? So tell the people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Jordan. I would describe myself as just someone who's very passionate about entrepreneurship, passionate about business, passionate about investing and finance. Since I was younger, that's always been an interest of mine. From a young age, me and my good friends were always just interested in trying to build projects, like building projects that affected our peers in some way, whether it was a clothing line or whether we were like selling video games in school. Yeah. We just always wanted to create opportunities for ourselves and also teach our friends how to do the same thing. So that's taken forms in a lot of different shapes for me, through being the founder of a clothing line called Young Moguls brand. And that's something I still operate now. And as you know, we branched it off a little bit into the world of Web3 through an NFT community called Moguls. That's promoting financial empowerment, promoting investing, and just trying to start a community around that. I'm also passionate about writing. So I published a book called Breaking the System a few years ago.
I actually brought a copy with me, y'all.
Yeah, he's a real supporter. He's a real supporter, and this is proof.
So we show y'all.
it's an authentic one. It's an authentic one. So obviously that's something I'm very passionate about. Something I want to do more in the future as well. But I think that kind of just sums up all my different interests. It spans a lot of different things, but I think the common denominator is just liking to build projects that bring people together and empower communities.
Most definitely. So as I was looking into your story, bro, I noticed that the word mogul has a very special meaning to you.
For sure.
As you touched on previously, as teenagers, you and your business partner, Brandon, started the Young Moguls clothing brand, which was very successful. And then more recently, you two co-founded the Moguls NFT project. Right. So I'm curious, what can you tell us about the origins of that word in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know when that word started becoming really important to us, but I think it was formally around high school of when that's when we sort of took it on as an identity, as like, okay, we're the Young Moguls. This, we want to operate with the Mogul mindset. But I think the reason why that word is so important is just because I think that mindset is something that's sort of been instilled in me from a young age. Like, I think you and I have talked about, I feel like I've kind of grown up in an entrepreneurial type household, whereas my dad, when I was growing up, was always very entrepreneurial minded. He was always building his own projects, whether it was like starting an advertising agency, whether it was being, writing his own book, and just all of these different things. And I think that kind of taught me from a young age, being a mogul isn't necessarily about being rich. It's not necessarily about, being super wealthy or having access to a bunch of things. It's more about the mindset that you take to everything that you do. Even if you're working a 9-to-5, in my opinion, the mogul mindset is the way that you approach carrying yourself, the way you carry your business, the way you carry your brand, and the way you just, approach finding your own opportunities and being the CEO of your own life, whether you're the CEO of a business or not. So, my co-founder, Brandon Iverson, and I, we've known each other our whole lives. Like, we grew up together. Our parents knew each other before we were born.
Okay.
We're born a few days apart. So ever since we've grown up, we've known each other, and we've always been having that same mindset of of being interested of, okay, how can we create our own opportunities to make money and not rely on other people? How can we invest? How can we do all of this? And so when we got to high school, we kind of put a word to that mindset of saying, okay, this is a brand we want to build of a mogul mindset we feel like we have, but we also want to make merchandise that sort of embodies that to other people. And when they wear this shirt, they can be reminded of that and sort of feel like, okay, this inspires me to think about that mindset as I'm going through my everyday life.
Most definitely.
So, we called it Young Moguls brand. It started off very, very local. Like, this was literally just, words we were printing on T-shirts for our friends. Like, it was not really, it was a business, but we didn't really see it as that. Mm-hmm. Like, we used to print T-shirts and stuff as many in our book bag as we could to go to school. Yeah. And like in between class, we like, it looked bad. Like it looked like we were doing drug deals or something.
Bro, oh my God, it's so funny that you say that. Hold that thought.
Yeah, Hold
that thought. I'm gonna come back to that.
That's what it was. And like, we were kind of like that all growing up through school. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember in elementary school, we would like make a little newspaper that we would print like in a library at home of just like current events, and we would sell them out of our book bag for like 50 cents. And then the product just kind of kept developing. So like it was newspapers, and then when we got to middle school, we were doing the same thing with like video games. Mm-hmm. So we would just like...
Hold that thought, bro. I'm going to go back to that. Right, hold that thought.
We were doing the same thing. Like we were just taking like all the toys, all the video games we didn't use anymore, and just like selling them to whoever wanted at school.
That is crazy, bro.
And that's how Young Moguls came about. And it continually grew. Like, Brandon went to a different high school than I did, so he started, like, promoting the shirts at his school. Right. And then we do, like, giveaways on Twitter, and people from other schools would win the giveaways and wear it to their school.
Essentially what you're doing right now.
Essentially what we're doing right now. So I think that's when we really realized, like, okay, this mindset that we're trying to think about as like a mogul mindset. Mm-hmm. Let's turn this into a movement. And, it caught on a little bit in Atlanta with like getting support from radio stations, TV shows. And then, obviously Steve Harvey was a big resource that helped us like go more nationally and stuff. And with Meta Moguls, the goal is to go internationally. Right. So that's been the coolest thing in my opinion, is like there's no borders with this now. Like, this past week, we've been sending merchandise to the places I didn't even know people were joining our Discord from. Yeah. Like the UK, Dubai, like random places that I didn't even know. So I think that's the goal now, is to take it even broader than just being US based.
I love that answer, bro. So I want to go back to your family really quickly. So in your questionnaire, you spoke a lot about your family, immediate and extended. But you referred to your father's impact in your life a couple different times. And you talked about your mom too. But for the sake of the question, I want to focus solely on your dad. So if you could, talk to us a little bit about your upbringing and some of the things that stood out to you about your father's teachings.
Yeah, it's very important. Like, that's single-handedly the most influential thing in my life. Like, obviously, my dad was more so the formal entrepreneur. That was his full identity. But my mom instilled a lot of that mindset in me as well. She's been hardworking her whole life and has been really the biggest person encouraging me in all of those things. So I think Brandon and I were really blessed that we had direct people to learn from and follow their example in our household. And that's something I don't take for granted, because that's not something a lot of people have. Right. And I think from that, one of the best lessons that our parents taught us that I think is valuable for other people is to outsource that experience or that knowledge in as many tangible ways as you can. So although we were learning a lot from our parents, we had a lot of other instructors that they were showing us. So like basically, I just remember whenever we drove anywhere or we were in the car, we were never listening to music. Right. And at first I used to hate it, really. Like, I just want to listen to the radio, but every time I got in the car, like, my dad was listening to some sort of self-development content. So it was like Jim Rohn or Robert Kiyosaki or Zig Ziglar, like all these motivational speakers. Les Brown was a big one. And it was just like consistently learning from other people. And that was before really like YouTube or was a thing, or before we were really reading books. But that was just an easy way to, like, my dad was like buying cassette tapes or CDs and putting them in the car. It's like you're learning a little bit every time you get in the car. Now I think that's even more accessible, like whether it's podcasts or YouTube or just people who have like good Twitter threads or just influencers on whatever social media. I think it's possible to take like what we were kind of doing there, learning from those people, and learn from them even more because you have more access to them, more access to their knowledge. So my thing would be, I think the best way to learn is just learn from people's lifestyle, like in terms of watching not just what they say, but how they operate. So obviously the podcast, YouTube videos are helpful for that. But then I think it goes a step further where it's like, okay, if you can in your community or even in some of those people that you're watching, the more you can like get one-on-one experience to shadow them, the better. So in the same way we were kind of shadowing our parents, I think it's very helpful if you can find just one mentor, someone, whether it's someone in your community, someone that you see on social media, someone you see on YouTube, and literally just ask if you can like follow them some days. Even if they're not telling you anything, like you just want to be in their environment. You just want to watch the way they carry themselves. You just want to watch the types of topics that they talk about. And for most of these people, it takes nothing for them to do that. Yeah. But it offers a lot of exposure. And I think that exposure in and of itself of just seeing the topics that people think about, seeing who they interact with, seeing how they carry themselves, that's really the big thing. It's not really the instruction as much.
Bro. That's so true. And it sounds like what your dad was doing was kind of like subconscious programming.
It is, yeah.
I actually went through a phase where I did that to my social media, where I used to follow DJ Academics, The Shade Room, just pages that are filled with just drama and negativity, right? And I realized, I'm like, all right, what are my goals and how are the things I'm, taking in every day, how are they helping me get closer to my goals? So I started to follow more influencers that were in the realm of financial literacy, such as Black Wealth Renaissance, Earn Your Leisure, platforms like that, Wall Street Trapper. And I started to follow a lot of fitness influencers as well. And I think that's really important that, like, the things that you see, the things that you hear, it is consciously programming you, whether you subconsciously programming you, whether you know it or not. And similar to what you and your dad used to do, one of my mentors, he used to pick me up all the time. We met at my church. And this guy was like, I say like 10 years older than me. I shared the story in my last episode, but we used to drive in the mainline area in Philly, near Villanova. And he always would take me to where Allen Iverson lived. And we would just look at the mansions. Sometimes I was scared because we pulled up in these white neighborhoods. Yeah. We would just sit outside and we would look at the mansions. We would, pick which car we liked the most out of the driveway. And he would always tell me, like, you're going to be living like this one day. And I didn't know how, but just that affirmation, it just made me want to continue to work hard. And I studied him, my mentor. What I liked about him was his duality. Being a man that came from where I come from in the hood, but also being a man of God, and a strong man of faith. And I feel like when you're young and you carving out your personality and just trying to find out, like, where you stand and what kind of person you want to be, having those models are extremely important because sometimes when you look at things from a societal standpoint, you think that you got to just fit into a box. And there's so many respectability politics at play. Like, if you don't talk this way, if you don't dress this way, it's like you can't get into certain rooms or get certain opportunities. And that's what a lot of this book is about, y'all. So I encourage y'all to get it.
That was one of my favorite topics from the book, really. Is like, kind of what we're talking about in the topic of exposure or just how those experiences are so important. However you can get it. Because whether you pay attention to it or not, like you said, we're all being exposed to something and it's having an impact on you, whether it's the music you listen to, whether it's the people you hang around, the food you eat, everything. And especially now more than ever, where it's happening more than ever, it's just happening more subconsciously than ever. And it's still having an effect. So I think it's really important to, on both sides, right? I think it's important for everyone to be conscious of what they're consuming and what they're being exposed to. And I think it's important for people who have the ability or the expertise to focus on like helping other people get exposed or helping expand that exposure to as many people as possible.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
That's your phone, bro.
Is it? Oh yeah, that's mine.
No, you're good.
My bad.
No, you're good. So I want to go back to something that you shared earlier, and you shared this story. You touched on it briefly about you and Brandon selling games in school. And I thought that story was pretty fascinating. And I say that because our journeys couldn't be any more different on paper.
Okay.
Like, if you just looked at our stories on paper, we come from two different worlds, bro. Yeah. But if you look beneath the surface, like if you knew more about each one of us, you would find that there are a lot of interesting parallels between us. And those parallels actually allow for us to sit on this couch today, but also be at Penn at the same exact time. So I don't even know if it's a question that I have after all of this. Is more so just something that I wanted to share with you. But, you know, as I read your story and learned how you and Brandon got into business, you shared the story about you selling video games at school and selling newspapers as well.
Right.
And I swear to God, bro, I did the same thing when I was in 6th grade. So before going to this charter school, I went to like my neighborhood school. But my grandmother wanted me to get a better opportunity. So she sent me to a charter school downtown called Math, Civics, and Sciences in Philly. So I went there in the 6th grade, bro. I swear to God. And they told me that I couldn't come back for the 8th grade. Like, I got expelled.
Oh, you?
I got kicked out by the 7th grade, and it was because I was selling games at school. Yeah. Now, of course, like, they didn't just...
You got suspended for that?
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you why. I didn't just get suspended for selling games. I got in trouble before that, but selling the games was like the biggest thing that got me expelled, and they called it extortion. Because it was a kid that we used to sell the games to. They were my games. Like, I had 2 PSPs. Like, my grandma used to give me all the games, things like that. So when I would beat the game, you know, you beat Grand Theft Auto, Need for Speed. You only play it so many times.
Yeah, it's over.
So I would sell it at school, and we came to find out that one of the kids that we were selling the games to, he was taking the money from his mom's purse to pay for us. And when she found out and confronted him, he said we were bullying him and we forced him to do it. So I guess because of my reputation at that age, they believed him and they ruled it as extortion, and they told me that I couldn't come back. So I shared that story because when I looked at your story and when I see all that you were able to go on and do and what you were able to become, it made me think about where I come from, because unfortunately, like a lot of kids like myself, we don't get those same opportunities where our curiosities are not cultivated. Like, I feel like our curiosities are often chastised. So I'm not saying this to throw myself a pity party in any way.
No,
I'm just being transparent about the
conversation.
So it's funny that somebody in your world is looked at as a future businessman, and somebody in my community with less resources is looked at as a hustler or a thug. All because they looked at the environment or the circumstances and said, I want to turn this $1 into 2. You know what I'm saying? If you just look at it, you know, from a bird's eye view, that's an entrepreneurial spirit right there that could have been cultivated if somebody had took me under their wing. But after that, you know, it was like...
How did that affect you? Like, I'm interested to know, after that experience, like, how did it affect how you approach those same passions, or like your same entrepreneurial? Did it make you shy away from those experiences?
It went away, and it changed the whole trajectory of my future, because when I got kicked out of that school, I had to go right back to the hood. Go to one of the worst schools in Philadelphia. That school is closed down now, and if you actually drive by the airport in Philly, you'll see the school, like, graffiti all over it. It's done, you know? So that changed my whole trajectory, bro. That one incident, and from there, like, I never tried to sell anything again. Like, I was brought up in a church, bro. I came from a good home, so I never wanted to sell drugs, but I still had an entrepreneurial spirit. Like, you want to get your own clothes. You want to get your own sneakers. Like, my grandma didn't let us work during the school year because she wanted us to focus on our academics. So in the summertime, I get my little job through Work Ready, Philadelphia Youth Network. You only make a certain amount of money. And my grandma told me once I became a teenager, she like, you got to buy your own uniforms now. So I'm like, how am I going to get all the J's that's coming out every other week? Like, I got to do something. I'm like, to me, this is legal. I didn't bully that kid, or I didn't extort him. So I just didn't see why. And as a kid, like, I never sold anything again, or like, I just shied away from that type of energy in my life. So I just thought that was interesting that you shared the same exact story, but like, I did it and it didn't really work out for me. That's a powerful point, because I think a lot of people don't realize the effect that they have on, and that they have on younger kids, but
this concept is really bigger than just with kids, because the same thing happens with adults too.
Oh yeah.
But I think for kids, a lot of times people just, and it's not always parents, but society doesn't always make environments conducive to learning or like letting people explore their passions.
Yeah.
Like you said, part of the reason why I wanted to write the book was just like there's certain avenues that people lead kids or young adults through, and that are the proven ones and that are accepted by society.
Yeah.
But they don't. It's frowned upon sometimes when people want to, explore their talents and create their own ways. And that's just a shame because, like you said, there's a lot of kids who are finding themselves in creative ways, and you can keep them in line without stifling their creative energy, or you can keep them on the right path, especially if they're not doing anything illegal, without completely shutting down their dreams or just letting them learn along that journey. But like you said, the same thing that happens with kids a lot of times happens with adults, especially with Black adults or minorities. Like you said, the same things we were doing, the things we were doing were inherently the same. And a lot of times the things that people on Wall Street do, or on high level business do, are the same things that people do in Black communities or other communities. But when it's done here, and it might not necessarily be as polished, or it might not have as much capital behind it, it's seen as, oh, that's shady, or oh, you can't really trust that business because it's not proven. But inherently, it's the same, creative spirit, the same motivations that a lot of these other businesses we support. It's the same thing, and they started the same way. So I think a lot of it as well is just the stigma of how people, for whatever reason, look at even Black-owned businesses, even when they're run by fully competent adults.
Well, that was a Black-owned school as well.
Yeah. And so, which is another powerful point, that we got to be conscious of how we do it to ourselves. Like, a lot of times it is, people doing stuff to our community, but a lot of times we have to even fix our own mindset of how we're even raising our own kids, or how we're dealing with other people's kids. Like, you got to be conscious of that type of stuff.
And I'm not saying I didn't deserve to get in trouble, bro, but to be kicked out of the school.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you can address that situation
in so many other ways.
In other ways that don't make that kid feel like.
But I felt like I always was a kid that colored outside the lines, bro. Like, I was a rebel. Like, I just didn't get stuff the first time. Where I'm a curious person, so I'd rather take a risk to do something crazy and learn than to just do what everybody else is doing. So I feel like most of the kids that had been going to that school, it's a K through 12, so they had already adopted that mentality and understood the systems and processes of that school. But because I'm coming from Southwest Philly, going downtown, where I gotta wear a tie now and a blazer, that was an entirely new world for me, bro. But I just feel like they didn't want to deal with teaching me. They just wanted somebody else that could just come in and fit into this program that they were running, and I didn't. Because
the teaching part takes more time and it takes more effort, but it's more fruitful if you take the time and the effort to. I mean, I think a lot of teachers do it. There's a lot of great teachers who don't. Like, a lot of teachers who really take the time to deal with that situation in a way that isn't just writing it off. I know, like, the writing it off and the kicking out saves time and energy, and the same with parenting. Like, a lot of parents just shut down their kids' dreams or want them to do the standard things because it's a little easier for me not to have to walk with you through the lessons and refining it. But if you take the time to walk through the lessons, like, there's a lot of things that come fruitful from that as a result if you take the time.
Look at what I've become, bro. Like, the fact that I got kicked out of school and was even able to go to Penn, or even if people knew my background, bro, like, it's like stuff like that doesn't happen. So if I just had more teachings, or if they actually knew what my family was like, or what I was dealing with in my neighborhood, like, those things matter. Context definitely matters. But I want to switch the topic. I don't want it to be
that's a powerful point, though.
It was, bro, but we gonna get back to it. So going back to your story, I do want to talk about some of the early events in your life that shaped your development as the young leader that you are today. And one of those experiences happened to be the Disney Dreamers Academy, where you were able to meet Steve Harvey and other celebrities. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so that was one of the most influential times for me, or like one of the most influential experiences. And it started off with being friends with Brandon. So Brandon, during our junior year of high school, applied for this program. I was a little mad because he didn't tell me that he applied for the program. So I didn't know Brandon was a part of this. Basically, he was like, yeah, I'm going to this program for a week in Orlando. I was like,
it had to hurt.
Cool. At the time, I was like, all right, bro, whatever. Like, have fun. I didn't really know what it was. But during the week, I'm like seeing his Instagram posts and what he's tweeting on Twitter, and he's like with Cam Newton and Stephen A. Smith and Steve Harvey. He interviewed him on like his podcast. I'm like, where is Brandon at? So, there was this program called the Disney Dreamers Academy, which still happens now, and it's a mentorship program basically that Steve Harvey does with Essence Magazine. Okay. And every year, there's an application process, but they choose 100 high school students from all over the country. Okay. Pretty much mostly black students, and
as they should.
Yeah. So it's basically they take those 100 students, they pay for them to come down to Disney World for a week, and basically, we talked about exposure. It's basically just a program for exposure. So they expose them to, being flown out on a trip, having everything paid for, having all these inspirational sessions. And basically, you write down what your passion is, what you're interested in, and they have all these tracks for the week where you go through sessions from people who are experienced in those realms. So like if you wanted to be a doctor, you're going through sessions learning from top black doctors and celebrities or people in that realm. And obviously Brandon was interested in entrepreneurship, so he was going through sessions with entrepreneurs, and there was just all this exposure for all these realms where people were seeing black creators, black people in media, black entrepreneurs, and really just being able to see what could be, from what could be possible in their own lives. And it's a powerful event because basically it's all about helping young people dream on a different level. Because Steve Harvey's whole concept is that a lot of us just have a lid on our jar in terms of how we dream, because you don't really know what you can dream sometimes, because you can only dream of what is possible.
What you're exposed to.
So, I saw Brandon going through all these experiences at Disney Dreamers, and he came back, and I could just definitely tell a difference in him. Like, he was more motivated in terms of our clothing line. He just had all these ideas for what he wanted it to become. And I knew it was something I wanted to apply to. So I applied my senior year of high school. And no lie, it was just something that affected my way, and that's just hard to explain. Yeah. Like, it just opened my mind in a new way. I know that sounds really cliche and really stupid, but literally it just sort of revealed to me, like, okay, you've been dreaming very safe. Yeah. And there's a whole new realm of like what you can aspire to, what you can actually do. And even now, like, I'm 24 years old now, and a lot of times I still have the notebooks and the notes from those sessions I went through, and it still impacts me and motivates me now, because that was like a breakthrough time in my life. Yeah. And a lot of that stuff I learned there is still applicable for me now. So it was just very inspirational. One, because I met a lot of people like me that, were my age, that had crazy dreams, and we were all going through that together. And then I was just exposed to so many people, not just Steve Harvey, but real mentors who still will open their doors to me now, and were willing to just share their time and help me dream on a different level. So it impacted me in a crazy way, and obviously it exposed us to Steve Harvey, and he took a liking to our brand and what we were trying to build, and was able to help us promote it. But yeah, to this day, that's one of my favorite experiences.
That's fire, bro. And I had chills listening to you, because what I'm realizing through this conversation, and I always knew, but the importance of just exposure, for one, resources, access, and equity in Black and brown communities, because I had a similar experience. Not to that magnitude. I wasn't meeting celebrities, but when I got out of high school, bro, like, I wasn't thinking about applying to a bunch of different colleges. Like, I was just thinking about where can I play basketball? Right. Where can I play at the next level? So I'm going to go to whatever school recruits me. So I ended up going to a D3 school my freshman year, and I transferred to Millerville, which is a D2, because I thought I could play at a higher level.
Wow, okay.
So I ended up playing. I made the team, and it's funny, bro, because before I got to Millerville, I actually had to sit out a semester. So I ended up going to school that January, so I missed that season that I would have been eligible to play for. And I missed it because my family, we didn't have the funds to pay for me to, meet the deadline.
Right.
I tried to ask different family members to take out a Parent Plus loan. It just didn't work out. So I ended up staying home and just working. So my grandmother, during that time period, we used to get into so many arguments and disagreements, bro, because she kept saying, apply to scholarships. And I'm like, kids, where we from don't get scholarships. Like, I don't know, like, what you thinking about. Like,
so she had to really push you to.
Yes. So one day I went on the computer and I just typed in Philadelphia-based scholarships, and a website called the Philadelphia Foundation came up. Okay. So I went on there. They had hundreds of scholarships if you left-handed, if you want to make change on the community, all of these things. Yeah. So I found one. It was called the Herbert Forward Foundation, and it was new, but it was basically for students who are interested in making a difference on their communities. Wow. And I've always been the same person. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but I've also been very passionate about philanthropy because I witnessed my grandmother do it my whole life. So I applied for this scholarship, and I had this idea for this nonprofit that I wanted to launch. So I ended up going to school that next semester. I hadn't heard back, and I interviewed with them. So I found out that I did place for an interview. So I was thinking nothing of it, bro, because I never got a scholarship before. I'm not used to, like, good things happening like that. So I interviewed, and they called me back, like, I swear, bro, it was like a day or two later. They was like, we don't usually do this, but your interview was so good that we just want to tell you, like, you got first place. And I couldn't believe it, bro, because I'm like, nah, me. Like, what I'm getting this for. So they had a whole day in Philly for all of the scholarship recipients. I think it was about 10 of us. And they took us, we met at the Westin Hotel. We went to a restaurant to eat. We did an escape room. They got us MacBook Pros. It was kind of like similar to what they do with the Bill Gates scholarship. So I remember we were on the party bus, and the CEO of the organization, who is now one of my mentors, we sitting on the bus, and I'm talking to the other kids. I'm like, I'm not like y'all. I'm like, I really come from the bottom. Like, I don't deserve to be here. Like, I'm not a bad student. Like, I always made solid grades, but I'm just like, I don't come from real. I don't deserve this. And the woman at the front, she was like, who said that? And I was like, everybody was looking around.
Everybody was like,
yeah, they like him. So I'm like, it was me. And she called me to the beginning, to the front of the bus, and she was like, I don't ever want to hear you say that again. Wow. She was like, when you meet people, you look them directly in the eye and you give them a firm handshake and know that you belong. You earned this. We interviewed hundreds of kids from all across the country, and you were one of the ones that got it.
She's a real one.
So I don't ever want to hear you talk like that again. And after that, she was like, as I was reading your story, it just was interesting, like hearing what you came from and like what you overcame to get to this point. Right. So I want to talk to you further. So after that day, she interviewed me. She invited me to her office, and she just was like asking me questions, trying to get to know me more. She offered me an internship. I interned with her that summer. And through that, bro, she was like, how do you pay for school? And I was like, man, I just do what I got to do, to make it work. So she was like, did you ever think about going to Temple University? I was like, no, like I can't afford it. So she was like, if you can apply and get into the school, we'll figure it out from there. So I'm like, all right. I went home and told my family, I'm like, I already transferred once already. That's going to look bad. And they was like, boy, this is a opportunity of a lifetime. Like, you don't get chances like this every day. So they was like, go. Like, if you get in, go. And she said she going to help you figure it out. So, you figure it out along the way. I ended up getting accepted to Temple. I stopped playing basketball, so now my mind opened up. I had time to just focus on academics and explore all of the things that I had never done before. Bro, by the time I left Temple, I won a Diamond Award, which is the highest accolade that a person could receive. Only 40 people get it at the university. There's 40,000 students there. And I came there as a junior. My organization I was in called Smooth, Strong Men Overcoming Obstacles Through Hard Work. it was basically like alternative to a fraternity for people
Okay.
that didn't want to go through that whole hazing process. We won Organization of the Year that year. Bro, when I say every award that was possible to win during my senior year,
You got it.
I got everything, bro. And it just was
And that all
crazy.
stems back to
It all
her.
stems back from that exposure.
program,
I met
yeah.
Michelle Obama because of this.
I remember. I've seen.
I hugged Michelle Obama, bro.
It's just crazy how like even as you trace that back, like how some of these experiences, or not even the experience, but even the moment of you applying or having those people to push you.
Yeah.
Like you might not realize how important that is there, but down the line as you look back,
It changed my whole life.
Michelle Obama or like the Diamond Award. You just never know in the moment, but
University of Penn. I would have never knew that I could do that, bro. I would have never known.
It's a domino
It's funny, bro, that she instilled so much self-confidence in me that when I started to apply for grad school, I told her that I wanted to go to Penn.
Yeah.
And I think this was the first time where she was like, all right, like he might be getting ahead of himself now. Like, I don't know.
Wow.
She didn't discourage me, but she just told me, she was like, if they don't take you, that's not on you. Like, you're still an amazing
But that's good.
kid.
That means you're in the right territory, especially when you see people, or even when you feel like that, or you see other people like that. It's like, okay, now I know we're within range.
Yeah.
At least of the way what you're aspiring for. Because I feel like we want situations where we tell people what we want to do, and they're like, yeah, you got it, no doubt.
Right.
But it worries us sometimes when people are like,
I
don't know.
Like, in a way, though, bro, like, any idea I told her that was great or something that might have been far-fetched, she never discouraged me, but she never oversold it to me either.
Yeah,
I feel like
honest with you.
Honesty. And then her honesty made me believe in myself even more. I'm actually happy that she took that approach, because when she kind of like, not doubt, but when she was honest, I wasn't expecting that. So I was like, I'm going to get into this school, man. Like, I'm going to get in here. I don't care. Like, I'm me now. Like, she helped me believe in myself so much that, like, I just felt like by that point, like, it was nothing I couldn't do.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm going to Penn. Like, I never saw nobody from my neighborhood go to Ivy League school. Like, I got to do this. And, bro, I actually got my acceptance to Pitt first. So I got a full ride to Pitt. And I didn't get my acceptance letter to Penn yet. So I got my acceptance letter, but it wasn't a full ride, because Penn, it's different, bro, financially.
Yeah, I know.
But I just told her, I was like, I gotta do it. Like, I just want to go.
Yeah.
And I feel like God made a way for me, bro, and everything was handled. But I say all that to say is, like, I think it's a little bit of serendipity. Like, it's a mindset thing. Like, this can happen for everybody, but you have to have the right mindset and approach to life. But, something has to spark that consciousness. Something has to spark that drive and motivation. And it seems like for you, it was the Disney Dreamers Academy. And for me, it was getting that first scholarship that ultimately allowed me to graduate school debt-free.
Yeah, bro.
Which was a blessing.
Those type of programs are important, but even without obviously, like, everybody's not going to be impacted by programs, which is why the people are important. Like, the woman you mentioned in the story, or even, as much as I talk about Disney Dreamers, there's 100 people at my church, or
that did just as much.
Yeah, or, an uncle, or especially my parents, who had, whether they did a lot or not, they were just very conscious of what they were saying in their conversations with me. That woman that you mentioned, she was very conscious and intentional in how she was engaging with you, right? Sure. She was honest. She wasn't going to sell you on, she wasn't going to tell you something that wasn't accurate or be honest with you.
Right.
But she also wasn't going to shut anything down. I think a lot of times people, like, don't know how to be honest without shutting people down, or telling them what they need to do. Even if you're being honest with them that, okay, this might not be possible realistically, it's still possible. Here's just like the route you might have to do to get it instead. So I think, finding those programs is important, but just in general for people, like, be that person. Yeah. Especially if you've had someone to be that. You don't have to necessarily fund, 100 kids' dreams per se, but you can make a big difference just in how you talk to people or how you encourage people with honesty. So that's what stood out to me about your story too.
And that's what I try to do, bro. Like, just me being me. Like, I'm the person Bro, I was a weird kid. I'm not gonna lie to you. But
What you mean by a weird kid?
like, I would walk down the street, I see a black woman and just be like, "Miss, you're beautiful." Just because I know, like, y'all laughing.
Young Wallow.
For real, bro.
Young
Like,
Wallow.
that's just always who I've been, bro.
Yeah.
Like, just like crazy. But no, bro. Just like I knew that my personality was like, even though I come from the hood, like I was raised with under African ideals, and my grandmother was such a giver that it rubbed off on me.
Wow.
So people always credit me for like, they always say like, "Oh, you're such a nice person. You're so kind." And I knew that about myself at a young age. So I'm like, how can I use whatever I have to make people's lives better?
Yeah.
I mentor a lot of kids in my community, and one of my biggest hopes was through this podcast. So many people reach out to me, bro, in my DMs and ask me for advice and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't talk to everybody.
Yeah.
But hopefully through this podcast, I can facilitate some of those conversations where y'all get the information, y'all get the resources, and y'all might be able to reach out to JP. I might not have the answer about NFTs, but I know who to send you to.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
and whatever, and the chain continues. Like whatever I don't have, you know,
It's someone else.
It's someone else who does. So I that's why I like the podcast, because you bring a lot of people on the podcast, and I think regardless of who people learn from, it empowers that idea of like, okay, we're all a community
For sure.
and we all learn from each other. And even if you need to learn from me about something, there's things I need to come to you to learn about.
For sure.
And it's almost like, I don't know, I just like to think that now, to try to think of that type of mindset with everything in life. Like we can all sort of be a little bit more synergistic in terms of learning from each other, like supporting each other and not having to be so combative or
defensive. If you look at any strong black movement, it was a synergy that helped it move forward. They was working together. So hopefully we could get back to that. But, going back to your story, bro, following that experience at the Disney Dreamers Academy, you head off to the University of Penn, where you attend one of the top business schools in the country. And you also wrote a book as a student. So
both impactful experiences for me.
How in the world is that even possible, bro? Like, I think I bought your book while you were a student at the school.
Yeah, I think so.
You might have been on the way out, but you were still a student.
I think that was
book.
like my senior year, I think.
Yeah. So talk to us about that, bro. Like, what led you to Penn, and what are some of the events that prompted you to write Breaking the System?
Yeah, I think in terms of leading the Penn was just a really interesting experience for me, and I don't even know where to start. Like, obviously, I'm from Georgia, like I'm from down south. Mm-hmm. We were talking a little before, like before college, I've been up north a few times, but not many.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody in Philadelphia.
Be nice to my guy, man.
Yeah, I know. We were talking before. It was a kind of a culture shock. It's just like a difference. Yeah. It was very different, but I'll get into that. But all I knew when I was in high school is that I was interested in business.
Right.
I knew I wanted to study business somehow, or I just wanted to learn about that. I didn't really care about anything else at school, per se. Initially, when I started, that changed when I got there, but I just knew I wanted to study business. And in high school, I was a pretty good student just because I was just pretty disciplined and organized in terms of like doing my homework. I wasn't necessarily naturally book smart. Mm-hmm. I just
worked really hard.
I just was working, like, I didn't really do much besides go to basketball practice, go home, do homework. I wasn't really into a lot of other nonsense and things like that.
Right.
So in my opinion, when I was in high school, it was easy because it was like, okay, if I do my homework, I turn it in, I'm gonna be cool. I'm gonna know what to do on the test. And that kind of got me through high school. So then, as I was thinking about college, I was heavily considering like UGA.
Okay.
Obviously, because it would have been free. UNC was really like my favorite school, and Penn came into the picture because.
Wait, hold up, bro. I'm a Duke fan.
Okay, we don't need to talk about that.
Go ahead,
because I'm definitely not a Duke fan. We're
not going to talk about that.
But we'll say that for after the podcast.
All right.
But it was just really Penn came into the picture because my dad and I were always talking about business stuff.
Okay.
And so my dad would just always mention like, yeah, you should Wharton is where a lot of business people go, or that's where a lot of entrepreneurs go. And I didn't really think about it much. I wasn't really planning for college. I wasn't one of those people who, like, from freshman year was planning for college and was trying to know where I was going to go. But as it came close, that kind of was just in the back of my head, like, okay, I know my dad's mentioned this. I don't know where he got it from, but I'll look into it. And I started looking into it. I was just very interested, mostly just from seeing the types of leaders who went through Penn, went through Wharton. That was
on some of them, bro.
I mean, people like, I'm pretty sure Warren Buffett or the CEO of Google, Elon Musk. Yeah, just a lot of different individuals. Even
I don't want to throw his name in there, but Trump.
I mean, at the time, that was a big factor. I mean, because this was early on, and to be honest, when I was younger, The Apprentice was like my favorite show. Yeah. Like before I guess that was before Shark Tank, but The Apprentice was like my favorite show because it was just one of the few shows that was all about business and about entrepreneurship and seeing people like go through all these entrepreneurial challenges. So that was a factor for me during the time. Like I was like, okay, this is someone who's like a big business person, a big entrepreneur, supposed to be really into real estate. That sounds interesting. Yeah. And of course, as we went through college, his more came out about him and more about his brand evolved, and that's a conversation for a different day. Right. But that was sort of what was coming to my mind like senior year. So, I was set on going to UNC, but I was like, I'll apply to Penn to see what happens. Yeah. I didn't know. There was a lot of questions there in terms of I didn't know whether I would get in because I thought my GPA was fine, but I wasn't really into standardized tests and all of that. But I felt like I was involved in extracurriculars and all of that. I didn't know if I would be able to afford Penn or what the financial aid would be like. But I just decided to apply, and I ended up getting in. And there was still a lot of questions financially. Like there was financial aid, but there was just questions of how it would fully be feasible. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just a time where I was like, I just feel like this is a jump I need to try to figure out how to make. Whether it's finding out how to get the financing, figuring out what's needed for student loans, finding out scholarships to apply to. I'm going to make it work because I feel like this is a setting that can help me and help my life. But more importantly, it was one of the schools it was really the only school I applied to that would make me very uncomfortable. Because I knew nobody in Philadelphia. I had no friend. I had one friend at Penn, my friend Tyler, who went to high school with me and played basketball at Penn. Okay. And one other kid from my school who was playing football at Penn but graduated before I got to Penn. Okay. So it was just brand new territory, which was kind of good for me. Like I had felt like in Atlanta at my high school, I had built up a lot of comfort level. Mm-hmm. Like I was very comfortable there, and I felt like I just needed to throw myself in a new environment where I had to start from scratch. And that's exactly what Penn was. Like Penn was hard for me. Like I remember my freshman year, it was initially hard socially, but there was programs like, there's a program called STEP that helped me a lot, just meeting friends before school even started. Just like finding my community. But academically, Penn was hard for me. Yeah. And like the first year,
it's a beast, bro.
Really the first 3 years, to be honest, I was like, it took me really until the end of my junior year to figure out like, okay, here's the best way to go about classes. Yeah. Here's how to not be stressed. Here's like where I need to spend my time and stuff. But it was just hard and it was uncomfortable. I was far away from home. We talked about I'm very close with my family, not just my immediate family, but even, my other family members, and none of them live in Philadelphia. Right. So it was just an experience for me to grow up in terms of like, you need to find out your parents, your family is supportive of you, but you're kind of out here on the island and you need to find out how to, who to go to, how to survive, how to get a job on campus or do whatever you need to do. Figure out how to get an internship during the summer and just find a way. And I think I was already independent before college just because I was very entrepreneurial. But when I got to college, it was just a whole different ball game in terms of like, I know I can't do everything by myself, but I just became much more of a self-starter and I grew up a lot. So I feel like that was a big experience for me.
So I want you to talk about the events that kind of led up to you writing the book while you were in school.
Yeah,
You touched on a lot, man. Like this book is profound. I'm not even just saying this because I know him, y'all. Like you wouldn't think that it's written by a college student, bro. Like,
that means a lot that you say that, bro.
No, seriously,
Thank
bro.
you.
Like it's a lot in here.
Thank
so
you.
I want you to talk about like, what space you were in to even write a book.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, not a great one.
Yeah.
Like that was what started the book. Mostly because of what we were all saying. Like that experience of going to Penn was hard in a lot of ways. It was hard academically. But it was also hard just because, you know, I was pretty isolated from everything that was comfortable for me. But I was also going through some of the most important lessons in terms of growing up as a man or thinking about what I wanted to do after college and career and all of this stuff. So junior year, that was really what was on my mind. Like I felt like at Penn and in society, there was like these avenues that were the frequent realms that were encouraged to go down, that were like respected, that was everything was pushing you that way. Like when I was at Wharton, obviously I forget the stat, but it's almost like 70% of people go into finance or go into consulting.
And it's the same companies.
What's
it? BGC?
BCG, McKinsey, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, whatever it is.
And no, that's no knock to anybody that works to any.
All great companies. My best friends work at those.
Me too. So I get it.
Those are great companies, but you can't honestly tell me. And obviously, like people go to Wharton because they're interested in finance. Like that's one of the best places to study finance. So clearly, a lot of them are going to go into finance.
Right.
But it was just odd to me that everybody's doing the same thing. Like, and I started to realize, like, even I was doing certain careers or realms of industry, not because I really wanted to per se, but just because that's what was respected in this system.
Yeah.
And if you went and did that type of job or internship in this system we were living in, everybody's like, oh, he got the internship. He's making this much money. And I just started realizing, like, those systems are a thing in a lot of different realms. Like, Wharton had its own system. Family, for different people's family, that's its own system where there's these social norms of we kind of lead people that if you do this, I'll cheer you on and I'll encourage you. If you do something else, I can't really vouch for you.
That's crazy.
Even if that's what you're truly passionate about.
Yeah.
So the book process was me really experimenting with these ideas like, what am I really passionate about?
Right.
Is it possible for me to go into realms I'm really passionate about and sustain myself financially? How important is money and sustaining myself financially?
Some good questions, man.
All of these different things. And I just started to feel like a lot of my peers and myself were just doing things because that's just what people were saying. Like that was when you come to Penn, you go to finance.
Right.
Or when you come to Wharton, you go into finance. That's just the norm. Nobody really wants to test that out. And that's one realm of it, but in everything I was just like, okay, in this system, I think that you can make the system better if you're willing to ask tough questions, if you're willing to challenge those social norms of questioning our intent or questioning what's genuinely things that we're passionate about. Right. So that's what this book is really all about in terms of not just blindly going with what the crowd is doing, but questioning yourself and questioning what the crowd's doing. Maybe what the crowd's doing is the right thing. Maybe that realm does make sense for you or for other people, but not being afraid to buck the trend a little bit and make it easier for everybody else to be their genuine selves. Because I think that just makes everything better. It makes the system better if someone can ask those questions.
It's crazy, bro, because there's a professor at Penn named Adam Grant.
Yep.
And he wrote one of my favorite books. It's called Originals.
Yeah, I love that book.
Bro, that book changed my life.
I love that book.
And he finally made me okay with like where I come from in my story. Yeah. But he talked about how, kids that are considered like highly intellectual when they're super young, those kids go on to know how to adapt to systems and go into those jobs like that you just mentioned. Maybe it's consulting, finance, like they've been groomed to function a certain way their entire lives. Yeah. But he said the kids that question things or color outside the lines, think outside the box. Those are the kids that usually go on to make waves in society, to make things happen because they actually, question the things around them and not just do exactly what they're told. Not to say that you should just go do a bunch of crazy stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Just saying you should question things and take pride in the parts of you that cares enough to do something different or have your own aspirations. So I really appreciated reading that book, and similar to when I read yours, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. This is completely honest. The first time I read chapter 5 of your book, I cried, bro.
Yeah,
I really did.
There was a lot of experiences like me in writing it where it was very emotional for me, and like because I feel like the tough thing about not even writing the book, but just acknowledging yourself and your emotion or your experiences is that you can't hide from it. Like, you just have to really, you just have to, and I think that was the most important thing for me in writing the book is it's just like, okay, I'm going to be completely honest with myself. Yeah. And a lot of people, we don't like that. Like, we don't like to ask ourselves tough questions. We don't like to ask, do I really like this job I'm in? Am I really passionate about this?
Like my boy Drake said, he said, I need more people to ask me things I don't ask myself.
Exactly. But it's important because like you become stronger when you face those things.
For sure.
And I think even in the experience of like what you're saying, like you become stronger even hearing from other people's stories or
most definitely,
facing your own.
Bro. And I think part of the reason why I got so emotional reading it was because I too suffered my own identity crisis. Yeah. Bro, I come from a family where my mom didn't receive a formal education past the 8th grade.
Wow.
And if I'm not mistaken, I'm the first on either side of my family to go on to receive a college degree, but even to go Ivy League, bro, that's unheard of for my family. So to go to a Temple or a University of Penn, those were extremely large undertakings for me. And I struggled a lot just trying to figure out who I wanted to be, what I wanted to stand for. And, bro, I went through a phase where I even changed the way I talked. And it still lingers till today. Like, when I'm in certain rooms, I just know how to just turn it on and off. And sometimes my friends be like, bro, like, that's not you. Like, bugging, man. So I changed the way I dressed. I changed the people I hung out with, all because I thought if I wore enough suits and hung around the elites, I would become great. I thought that was the formula to become great. And with all of the success that I achieved and all of the things that I did, winning the Diamond Award, winning all of those awards at Temple, I never felt fulfilled on the inside because I wasn't honoring my multi-dimensional self. Like, I wasn't honoring my duality. Yeah. I hated the fact that I came from the hood, but I didn't have any desire to uphold a street image. That just wasn't who I was. So that was the source of a lot of my insecurities entering into young adulthood, because where I'm from, bro, we don't really value intelligence as much as we value being the toughest guy in the room, somebody that could beat somebody up or check somebody, because women admire the tough guy and men fear that guy. So the fact that I wasn't that, it just made me feel like useless at times. So I kind of felt like when I was at Penn or even at Temple, it was almost like I had to kill off parts of myself just so I could survive in that environment, bro. So when I read the chapter and somebody like you, who I looked at as, from the outside looking in, bro, I thought your life was just perfect. Like, you do everything right. You win all the awards. You got the friends. You're a published author. So when I was like, oh, this person actually struggles in real life too. Like, he goes through similar things to me. Yeah. That was comforting, bro. I don't know why it was, but to me, it just kind of let me know, like, everything is okay. Like, you're not the only person in the world that's going through something. So I want to ask you, like, what was your favorite part of writing the book?
That's a good question.
Well, even if you want to just respond to what I was just talking about.
Yeah, 'cause you said a lot. Like, you said everything I was thinking about when I was writing the book. I think the interesting thing about that is a lot of what I was feeling when I was writing the book